everybody. Dr. Rick Wallace here, dropping in on you. Hope everybody is having a good day. I hope that you have gotten off to a great week. Here we are. It's Tuesday. No matter where you are, if you're still breathing, you're still in the fight. This is something I had to remind myself of this past week, but again, I'm still standing. And that is in itself a testimony of perseverance and resilience. And I'm telling you that if you want to achieve the highest levels in life, you're going to have a level of resilience that makes you relentless, even in the most difficult times. I was having a conversation earlier, and the conversation simply rested on the fact that you win in those moments when you don't feel like it. You know, everybody gets up and when they're in a good mood, when everything's going well, up, go out, do what you do. But it's in those moments you don't feel like it. It's in those moments that you just want to sit down and have a pity party. You want to sit down and talk about everything that's wrong. You want to sit down and find all the people who's done wrong to you and point the finger and none of that changes your situation. None of that is going to elevate you. None of that is going to solve your problem. But what it will do is bog you down in a level of negative energy and negative vibrations and horrible thought processes that will disrupt you in your mental and emotional equilibrium to the point that you become paralyzed and you get nothing done. So I encourage you to stand up. Now, the beautiful thing today is double it down day. What does that mean? That whatever offer is in that description box means that if you sign up for that, you're going to get a free version, another free one, the same identical thing for free. And I'm going to tell you what it is later, but I just want to let you know that it's double down day. So you're going to get it and then you're going to get a free one, which you can give away, or you can add it on to what you already have and go longer. But that's in there. So uh, I have a number of different platforms that I operate on. I have a number of different online businesses and entities that I operate, and all of them don't have it. All of them are not directly associated with what I do primarily, which is personal behavior, personal performance, personal healing. Um, Anything to do with the behavioral sciences, I have my hand in it. But my primary focus is on two different ends of the spectrum: healing trauma and performance psychology, helping people win, helping people do things. And they're connected, they are inextricably connected. And that's how I got involved. Normally, someone hangs their hat in one end or the other. But what I realized is you can talk performance all day long. You can talk about the importance of how you think, how you approach any particular task, how you get the most out of your life. But if you haven't healed, if you haven't dealt with the trauma, whether it's childhood trauma, whether it's something that went on in a relationship, whatever it is, if you haven't dealt with it, if it was losing someone tragically or unexpectedly, if you haven't dealt with it, it has a massive impact on the level at which you can rise. So what I'm here to do is today is to talk to you about that, because there are some platforms that are more focused on performance, more focused on business and success in business and all of that. And you know, you get the questions, well, why are you posting about mental health here? Why are you posting about psychology here? What does it have to do with? Let me tell you something. Let me be very clear with you. 80% of success in life, regardless to what you are attempting to achieve, is psychology. Your thought processes, your perception, how you view yourself in this world, your self-image, all of those things are inextricably connected to how successful you will be in life. If your psychology isn't right, I don't care what kind of plan you have. I don't care who's backing you. I don't care what you're doing. If your psychology is off, you're going to struggle in being successful on a consistent basis in anything you attempt in life. So then how do we create the proper psychology? What, like anything else, we're talking foundation. What is the foundation of psychology? Self-image. Everybody approaches psychology from the realm of experience, human experience. impact psychology, but psychology begins with how you see yourself in the world, because how you see yourself in the world is going to determine the capacity at which you approach the world in believing what you can do. Now, experiences like trauma are going to affect that. Now, you can have two people who go through trauma, the same time. Prime example, 9/11. There are people who are in the building who weren't traumatized. They experienced the trauma, but it did not traumatize them in the sense of there being a noticeable or uh, diagnosable level of trauma that needed to be treated. While there were people, not even in the city of New York, who saw what happened on television, who are still being treated. So, what's the difference? Perception. Somebody's self image is that I can conquer anything, I can overcome anything. And by just participating in their own survival, or especially if they helped others survive that day, it meant that they didn't become traumatized by it. Their self image or self concept of being powerful was reinforced. So they have to be careful in that too, because what that can do is easily lead to being more daring. But in the right sense, that's not a bad thing, because in order to be successful, in order to excel, you have to have the ability and the capacity to be willing to take calculated risks. Someone who is risk averse, especially excessively risk averse, is going to have a hard time achieving and realizing high levels of success because they come with risk. And so, why is it so important to heal? Because here's a number of things. Yes, it's going to impact your success, but here's something that I discovered while researching generational trauma. There's a science. It's becoming more mainstream, and more people are hearing about it. More people are talking about it. But at the time that I was studying it, it was relatively unknown, and we were still gaining an understanding of what it meant and how it impacted us. But it's the science of epigenetics, the studying of genetic influence on a number of different factors. Well, we did learn initially, early on in the research, that you can pass down trauma genetically. We learned that there are certain things we call epigenetic tags. When there is a traumatic experience that is intense enough, it will literally make an imprint on certain genes. And in that imprint is the experience. The gene is actually causing the experience. Dr. Basil van der Kolk, who I consider to be the foremost mind in traumatic memory and traumatic healing, wrote a lay book called The Body Keeps the Score. And it talks about how trauma exists on a cellular level. Well, in studying epigenetics, I came to find out not only can you pass down trauma through genetic procreation, but you can also heighten trauma by being more vulnerable to it through environmental experience. You can, in other words, you can take two identical twins, which means genetically they are the same. They were the same ovum that split after fertilization and became two, but they are genetically the same. You can take them, and initially they're going to be identical. Very few people will be able to tell them apart, and they will go on. But the more and more that you put them in diverse and divergent environments, the more you will be able to see the difference in how they move, the difference in their development, how they age, and how they respond to different illnesses or whatever. So you find out that the more challenging and traumatic the life environment, the more likely they are to become ill, the more likely that they are to die early. But we also gain something and I was actually asked to speak in Frankfurt, Germany on this about 5 years ago. And that is that trauma and intensely negative situations tend to upregulate cancer genes. Well, then there are other disease genes that it regulates as well. So there are these cancer genes. And if you study cancer and you understand cancer, then what you find is that in order for cancer to actually happen, for most cancers to actually happen, these genes have to be upregulated. They're there in everyone, but they are normally dormant and they have to be upregulated. Well, you used to believe that if mom had it, you had it, or you were more likely to have it. So we thought it was genetically passed down by proclivity, genetic proclivity. But what we find now is that it's more environmentally influenced. In other words, people who are in stressful environments are more likely to become ill. People who are in stressful environments have a tendency to upregulate genes. So, in other words, being in a stressful environment, going through trauma, all these things make you more likely to become ill. Now, the surface of that, psychosomatics, we've known for years that the mind has a direct impact on physical health. Psychosomatics, we know that. But what we learn in epigenetics is to the depth of it. We also have a subcategory of epigenetic influence on, as far trauma influence on health outcomes, and that is in childhood trauma. We call them adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. And in adverse childhood experiences, what we find out is that each childhood experience, and some of the adverse childhood experiences that count as being influential in long-term health outcomes, includes parents separating, parents abusive, a parent being abused or being abusive, a parent addicted to a controlled substance, a parent being incarcerated, a feeling of abandonment, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, physical abuse. Uh, those are some of the primaries that constitute adverse childhood experiences. Each one of those I named counts as a point. Here's what I can tell you, that with as few as 3 adverse childhood experiences, there are going to be some uh, physiological and health ramifications, not just in the short term, but throughout life. And this is even with intervention. But here's the thing, a child with at least 4 ACEs is 12 times more likely to at some point attempt suicide. A child with 3 to 4 ACEs is 6 times more likely to develop ischemic heart disease, 4 times more likely to develop type 2 diabetes. I could go on down the line that of these correlations that are directly attached to this type of experience. So now we're talking about an epigenetic influence that carries out and can be directly traced back to childhood experiences. Well, that's on the physiological health side. What about on the behavioral and social side? Because success in life is skill, engagement, but it is also the ability to function in a social environment, to be socialized in a manner in which you can move and operate and take advantage of opportunities as they present themselves. Here's the problem. A person who is suffering from some form of trauma. Now, here's the thing. We hear PTSD a lot. PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. You get that a lot with people who have had a major traumatic event. You see it with people who were in car or have been in car accidents, have been shot. You see it with people like experiences like 9/11. You get it a lot with soldiers returning from combat and having seen something atrocious and all of that. But that normally comes from PTSD is normally something that you get with one major traumatic experience that the body and the mind cannot process in a way that creates a linear timeline tag. In other words, everything that we experience in our life, if everything goes normal, is categorized and tagged and placed within a linear timeline in our psyche and in our memory. What does that mean? That when we recall something, we psychologically and subconsciously know that it's in the past. And why is that important? Because if I know something is in the past, no matter how bad it was, no matter what type of emotions it may stir up in me, it doesn't present itself as a threat. Well, with people with traumatic memory, people who are not in a situation where their traumatic experience has been properly placed in the right linear timeline where it's now past and you're now in the present and you're looking to the future. It's now. And what does that mean? That means that any trigger that brings it up does not bring it up as a memory of the past. It brings it up as a relived experience. So it is now a threat in process. You're literally reliving it. You're hearing the same sounds, you're getting the same smells, the same taste in your mouth. If you were sweating profusely, you're going to sweat. You're literally reliving it. It's called traumatic memory. And it is paralyzing. It destroys relationships. It makes it difficult for people to build bonds. And it will impact you in your attempt to become successful. So, what do? You have to develop a will to heal. And you have to be willing to put in the work. This is something I could talk about all day because it's a part of what I do. Like I say, everybody loves to talk about the work I do in the Visionetics Institute that deals with high performance. And I love my high performance clients. I love you guys. You guys are where I eat. Just let's keep it real. But I have an entire group of people who are on the other end of the spectrum. I have women who were abused as children. Matter of fact, I've got several women over the age of 60 that are still struggling with ancestral encounters as youth, as minors. I have people who went through domestic abuse. I have people who were harmed and raped as adults. I have that type of thing, and that is a process that they have to go through to heal. And for them to be the best they can be, they have to come from behind the veneer that they've created. They've got to come from behind the covering that they've created to protect themselves. They need to be able to experience life at its height in order to perform at their height. And that is why healing is necessary. I take so much joy and pride in doing the work I do. It's not easy. It's very taxing. It's taxing enough that I have a full-time therapist because no matter how good I am, there's a point in time where I've got to get this off of me because I'm taking it on. And because I'm an empath, I feel. So it's not a methodical, systemic move for me. It's an engaging, let me hold that for a minute for you type thing. Let me move it around for a minute. Let's see what we can do with it for a minute. That type of thing. And I'm dealing with kids who are having suicidal ideations. Those are the real things, but that's the love of my work. And so about some years ago, I created a program. And it's entitled in Healing Emotional Trauma, but it's about healing trauma in all levels. It's about overcoming the things that have taken a hold of us and are literally within our cellular makeup that literally can be triggered about almost anything. And it doesn't allow us to trust it. It doesn't allow us to love in the fullness of our capacity. It doesn't allow us to be bold enough to stand out and step out and march out and move. It doesn't allow us to do that. And so what I decided to create it. And I decided to create it in two forms. The first form is a self-paced course that you can order and you can take yourself through the process. I've seen people go through the healing process on their own. Uh, I prefer to work with people because it can become troubling. It can become taxing. You can get to some moments that literally frighten you, but it's better than not doing anything. And that is an offer in there. The second is something that I'm really, really excited about, and it's the program plus me. And that means you get the program, but you're going to walk through this program step by step with me. I'm going to take you through it. I'm going to give you the guidance you need. We're going to analyze what needs to be analyzed. We're going to properly process what needs to be processed. We're going to categorize and log in our memory the things we need to log in our memory as the past. We're going to integrate those bad moments into your linear timeline so that they no longer are creeping into your present and disrupting your capacity for a great future. And again, because this is far too common and far more common than anyone wants to admit, I am going to uh, give everybody who signs up, I'm going to give you a second one free. Now that's for someone else, but if you want to take it and say, I need a double dose, I'm gonna need more than X amount of sessions. And like I said, these courses aren't, you know, okay, 2 or 3. I'm talking 19 modules, and I'm talking about I'm gonna go through with them. I'm gonna go through all of them with you. If you get the uh, larger course, I mean the support. It's called the supported course and the non-supported course. But if you get this non-supported course, I'm still going to be available. Just email me. Just email me and I'll answer your questions. Um, if I need to get on the phone with you about something that can't be answered in an email, I'll do it. But whatever you do, it's time to heal. It's time to heal. It's time to get out of the past because there's so much out in front of you. And there's a bunch of you that are watching this that know it's time to heal. It's time to stop pretending. It's time to start living. Let me help you. On that note, I'm out here. As I always say, I'm going to live my life on full so that when I leave this place, I die on E. I'm challenging you to do the same thing. On that note, I am out. You guys have an unbelievable day.